Why was she always invisible in the room? The voices around her rose and fell, men debating tactics and strength. But when she spoke, silence, not the respectful kind, the kind that swallowed her words whole and left nothing behind. Sarah Chun sat at the end of the briefing table, notebook open, pen ready. The morning sun through the tall windows drew long slashes of light across the polished floor, catching dust motes that seemed louder than her presence. She was 26, 5'4", shoulders narrow, hands steady only because she forced them to be, to most in this room. She looked like a student who had walked into the wrong lecture, and maybe that's what they wanted her to believe. The program had been designed to break people like her. 6 months of relentless pressure, stripping away weakness until only 12 remained from the original 200. Sarah was one of the 12, but not because she was the fastest, not because she was the strongest. She survived because she refused to quit. Still, the quiet whispers followed her. Physical limitations, unsure for field deployment, better suited for analysis than confrontation. They didn't say it to her face. They didn't have to. She read it in every dismissal, every polite nod when she offered an idea. Every moment they steered her back to intelligence work instead of direct action. She knew the truth. She wasn't built like the others, but she had been preparing for this invisibility her entire life. The instructors didn't know about the nights she spent bent over old case files, eyes burning as she studied. The patterns of hostage takers no one even remembered. They didn't know about the private simulations she ran on her laptop until dawn, practicing negotiation tactics against scenarios more complex than anything the program dared to test. They didn't know about the maps covering her apartment, walls marked with routes, escape corridors, and coded notes that would have made seasoned analysts raise an eyebrow. They didn't know that for her. This wasn't just training, it was survival. When she was a child in London, the daughter of Chinese immigrants, she learned early that people underestimated her before she even spoke. Teachers praised her quietness as diligence, not realizing it was a mask. Classmates assumed she was only good at numbers, never leadership. Even her own parents questioned her path. Law enforcement? Negotiation? Wasn't that too confrontational for someone like her? Sarah had listened. Then she had watched, and she had noticed a pattern. The negotiators who truly saved lives weren't the loudest. They weren't the most imposing figures in the room. They were the ones who saw what others missed, who treated desperate men not as monsters, but as human beings, one choice away from breaking. The ones who built trust where no one believed it could exist. That's what she wanted to become. Not a soldier, not a gun. A mirror that showed people a way out of the darkness. But in this briefing room, surrounded by men who measured strength by the width of their shoulders, she was still the shadow at the edge of the table. Specialist Chun, the instructor, called suddenly, his eyes flicking to her as if testing whether she'd been listening. What's the most common error in first contact during a hostage negotiation? Her pen stilled. She met his gaze calm, assuming the demands are the truth. They're almost never the truth. They're symptoms. The real motivation is buried. Hidden, find that, and you find the key. A silence fell for a breath. Just a breath. She thought maybe, just maybe, her words landed. Then someone coughed, a chair shifted, and the moment passed. She lowered her eyes to her notebook, hiding the small flicker of anger beneath her calm exterior. That evening, she walked back into her apartment overlooking the Danube. The walls glowed faintly with city light, but the real illumination came from the notes that wallpapered her life. Maps, profiles, psychological breakdowns of men whose names never made it into textbooks. She pulled off her jacket, sat at her desk, and opened her laptop. Another simulation, another scenario. This one, a group of militants in an abandoned factory. 50 hostages. A countdown clock at the top corner of the screen. Her fingers typed commands, her voice low as she practiced responses, switching languages. Effortlessly, Arabic, Russian, German, Mandarin, each word carefully chosen, each pause calculated. She watched the digital readout shift, danger levels spiking or easing depending on the cadence of her sentences. Most people would have seen obsession. She saw preparation. Because what the others didn't know, what she couldn't tell them, was that she felt something in her bones. A moment was coming. A test that wouldn't be scripted, wouldn't be safe, wouldn't allow for do-overs. And when it came, she wouldn't have the luxury of being underestimated anymore. The pen scratches in her journal slowed as midnight turned to 1, then 2. She leaned back, exhaustion tugging at her. But her mind refused to quiet. She thought of the instructor's notes. Too small, too fragile, better behind a desk. She thought of the classmates who smiled politely, as though they were indulging her effort. And she thought of the faces of hostages. In old photographs, eyes hollow with fear, waiting for someone to say the words that might save them. She whispered into the empty room, as if to them, "I won't let you down." The next morning began like all the others, a sharp chill in the Vienna air. The walk to the training facility, boots echoing softly against the pavement. The saying, tall windows spilling sunlight across the floor. As though mocking her routine, she moved through it all with the calm precision of someone who lived inside discipline. But as the briefing began, she felt the air shift. The instructor's voice carried an edge of tension, something unspoken in the room. Phones buzzed quietly at the edge of the table. Officers exchanged glances they tried to mask as routine. She felt the tremor in her stomach before she heard the words. An incident has been reported. Her pen stopped. Unconfirmed, but serious. Details will follow. The others leaned forward, adrenaline sparking in their eyes at the possibility of a real operation. Sarah stayed still, her mind already racing through possibilities. Then her phone vibrated, an unfamiliar number. She excused herself quietly, stepping into the corridor, and answered. A single voice, sharp, urgent. "Chun, headquarters, now." The line went dead. Her hand trembled, just once, before she steadied. She slid the phone into her pocket, heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't know it yet. But this was the moment her life would pivot. The line between training and reality had just vanished. She returned to the room, gathered her notebook, and walked out without a word. The others watched her go, some with curiosity, some with relief. Few cared enough to wonder why she had been called. But she knew this was it. The test she had felt coming. Outside, the sirens wailed across the city. Streaks of red and blue lights tearing through Vienna's quiet morning. Emergency vehicles screamed past her car as she drove. Something had happened. Something big enough to mobilize the entire city. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Every word, every analysis, every lonely night with case files, everything would either mean something now or nothing at all. And for the first time in her life, being underestimated might not be her burden. It might be her weapon. Why was headquarters louder than a battlefield? The moment Sarah pushed through the glass doors, the noise hit her like a wall. Radios squawked in overlapping languages. Phones rang without pause. Officers shouted updates over the roar of printers. Spitting paper onto the floor, the air smelled of sweat, coffee, and something else, fear. She hesitated only for a second, scanning the room. Uniforms blurred into one another, a tide of motion that seemed to have no direction, no anchor. Then she spotted him, Weber, the senior director who had tested her ruthlessly for months. His face, usually carved from stone, was pale. Chun. His voice carried urgency she had never heard before. He was still wearing his headset, one hand pressed to his ear, the other scribbling frantic notes. "We don't have time, follow me." Her boots struck the tile as she kept up with him, weaving past walls of screens that streamed live feeds. Police vehicles boxed in a building on the outskirts of the city. Spotlights swept across windows. Children's faces flickered in grainy frames. Her throat tightened. What happened? she asked. 2 hours ago, armed men entered the International School of Vienna, Weber said, not slowing. They've locked down the campus, teachers, students, staff, about 100 hostages in total. They're armed, organized, and have cut off all internal communication. They sent a live video feed showing the hostages in the auditorium. Her stomach dropped. The international school wasn't just any school. It was where the children of diplomats, executives, and officials studied. Every decision in the next hours would echo far beyond Vienna. "Where's Hoffman?" she asked, naming the director who usually led negotiations. "In Brussels, crisis summit. His deputy was in a car accident this morning, surgery. Our backup leader is in quarantine with COVID." Weber's jaw clenched. "Berlin sending replacements, but they're 6 hours out." Sarah stopped in her tracks. The calculation slammed into her. 6 hours. The hostages didn't have 6 hours. She forced herself forward. Who's leading negotiations until then? Weber stopped at the main command station, his eyes locking on hers, and in that silence, she understood. "No," she whispered. "Yes." His voice was gravel. "You scored the highest psychological assessment in program history. Your theoretical knowledge surpasses most of our active staff. The ministry has authorized an accelerated evaluation." Her pulse thundered. This wasn't training. This wasn't simulation. It was the nightmare every negotiator prepared for and prayed never to face. "You want me to lead the negotiation?" Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "I want you to prove theory can survive contact with reality," Weber said. "But hear me clearly. If you fail, people die, children die. You'll carry that for the rest of your life." Her chest tightened until she thought it might split. One option, refuse, wait for Berlin. But 6 hours could mean dozens of dead. The other option, accept, risk everything, her career, her sanity, her soul. Her watch read 4:15 a.m. The hostage takers had given until noon before they began killing one every hour. Less than 8 hours to turn desperation into survival. "I'll do it." Her voice steadied even as adrenaline surged. "God help us all," Weber muttered. The announcement spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the command center erupted in outrage. "This is insane," Chief Inspector Klov barked, his uniform bristling with authority. 100 lives, including children of diplomats, and you hand it to a trainee? Commander Brennan from the tactical unit shook her head sharply. "With respect, Specialist Chun has academic talent, but crisis negotiation isn't theory. It's pressure. Blood. Screams. She hasn't faced it. She'd crumble." Sarah stood silent, the debate swirling around her like a storm. Their words weren't new. Too young, too small, too fragile. She'd heard it all before. Still, each syllable pressed against her like lead. "She's not even authoritative enough," Brennan continued, her voice cutting. "A young woman facing hardened criminals? They'll see weakness. They'll smell it." Her cheeks flushed, but she kept her gaze low. If she looked up, they'd see the anger beneath her calm. The room filled with voices, layered with fear of failure and careers destroyed by international scrutiny. 12 governments already demanded updates. Any wrong move could set fire to diplomacy itself. Deputy Commander Hartmann has 15 years of experience, Inspector Valdez argued. He should lead. She can advise. Weber shook his head. Hartmann's experience is robberies and domestic disputes. This isn't that. Chun's knowledge of international crisis patterns exceeds his. Knowledge isn't experience, Clough snapped. When hostages start dying, knowledge won't hold her together. The words struck deep. What if they're right? For a breath, the doubt gnawed at her. She saw herself shaking, voice breaking, failing. Then she remembered something else. The maps in her apartment, the files no one had assigned her. The years of watching, learning, never being seen. She had been underestimated all her life. But what if that was the point? Her voice broke through, calm but firm. with respect. The hostage-takers have planned for conventional responses. Standard tactics won't work. They expect them. What they won't expect is someone who understands their psychology. The room fell quiet. Disbelief weighed heavy. But for the first time, no one interrupted. Hartman cleared his throat. If she insists, then at minimum. She works under supervision. She doesn't make final calls. It was a case disguised as compromise. She knew what it meant. She'd be reduced to whispers while others commanded. Her insights buried beneath protocol. And then the message arrived. A new demand from the hostage-takers. They wanted to speak not with the negotiator, not with the authorities. Their words were specific. We will extend the deadline if we speak with the analyst who understands us. The room erupted. It's manipulation. Dr. Werner from the ministry said flatly. They're testing us, forcing us to expose weaknesses. Sarah shook her head. No. The phrasing in Arabic, it carries respect. They don't want to exploit. They want to be heard. They want someone who sees them. Brennan glared. You're humanizing terrorists. Dangerous mistake. Sarah met her eyes. I'm recognizing parents who've reached breaking point. That's different. For the first time. Silence didn't dismiss her. Silence listened. Weber finally spoke. You have until 11:30. Prove your understanding means more than our experience. Fail, and Hartman takes over. Every gaze pinned her like a weight. Some eyes burned with skepticism. Others with quiet pity. A few with reluctant hope. Sarah's hands trembled as she left the table. Not from fear of failure. From the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. She walked toward the mobile communication unit. Each step pulling her deeper into a role no one believed she could fill. The van smelled faintly of electronics and stale air. Officer Hoffman looked up, startled. Specialist Chun? I thought Hartman. Change of plans, Sarah said. Voice steady though her pulse thundered. Director Weber authorized me to establish contact. It wasn't entirely true. He'd meant her to advise. But she knew that if Hartman's voice spoke first, the chance would vanish. She sat, slipped the headset on, fingers hovering over the channel. Her breath caught. Once she pressed that button, there would be no buffer. No simulation, just real men with guns, real children pressed against one another in fear. She closed her eyes for a second. She thought of the words she whispered in her apartment nights before. I won't let you down. Then she pressed. This is Dr. Sarah Chun. She said in Arabic, her voice low, calm, deliberate. I understand you asked to speak with someone who sees beyond demands. I'm here to listen. Static. Silence. 30 seconds that stretched like eternity. Her chest tightened, every muscle taut. Then a voice accented Arabic, Syrian perhaps, soft, tired. Dr. Chun. It said, I am. Hello, I speak for the others here. We did not expect someone in our own language. Her hand steadied, already. The smallest thread of connection, a thread fragile as glass, strong enough to carry 100 lives if she didn't let it shatter. Behind her, footsteps rushed. Command staff had realized what she'd done. Soon they'd demand she stop. But Halal's voice came again, breaking the world into two parts. Before, and now, we will speak. But only if you promise this, not to treat us as monsters. Will you? Her eyes burned, though she kept her tongue. Even, Hail, I promise to treat you as a man, a father. Tell me why you are here. And in that moment, in a van filled with radio hiss and pounding footsteps, Sarah took the first step toward rescuing 100 lives. What if one wrong word could kill a child? The headset felt heavier with every second it stayed on Sarah's ears. The voices behind her blurred into distant noise officers hissing protests. Footsteps pounding closer, radios crackling warnings. None of it mattered, only the silence on the line. Then Halil spoke again. His Arabic was precise, almost formal, with a faint Lebanese lilt. You ask why we are here, he said. For 3 years. We tried every legal way to help our families. We wrote letters. We begged officials. We protested peacefully. Nothing worked. Our children. His voice cracked. Our children are dying in camps, while politicians debate paperwork. Sarah's throat tightened. This was not the rhetoric of ideology, not the cold tone of a hardened terrorist. This was the raw, ragged voice of a father whose pleas had been ignored until only desperation remained. Behind her, Officer Hoffman whispered urgently into her radio, alerting the command center. Within moments, the door burst open. Weber entered with Hartman and Dr. Werner at his heels. Chun, terminate. Contact immediately, Hartman ordered, voice sharp. She raised a hand, palm outward, silencing them without looking away from the screen. If she broke the fragile thread now, there would be no rebuilding it. Halil, she said softly, her voice steady though her chest felt like a drum. Tell me about your daughter. A pause. A breath that seemed to travel through the wire. Amamira, he said, and the syllables carried a tenderness that pierced through the static. She is 18 months in a camp in Greece. Pneumonia, no medicine. She almost died. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She imagined a little girl in a crowded tent, coughing, struggling for breath while bureaucrats shuffled papers in some office. I hear you, Sarah said. I hear the pain you carry. But Halo, there are children inside with you too, innocent. Afraid they are someone else's Amamira. How can we help your daughter without hurting them? The line went silent again. She felt Weber's hand on her shoulder, heavy with tension. You're making promises you can't keep, he murmured. Low enough for only her, but Halo's voice returned, softer, different. Dr. Chun, you are the first person in 3 years who asked about my child instead of my demands. If you are serious, maybe we can find a way that does not require blood. Sarah opened her eyes. Around her, disbelief hung heavy in the van. For all their training, all their experience, none of the veterans had pulled the conversation this far. She had, with a single question. Hello, she said gently. What do you need? And then it came an outpouring not of weapons or ideology, but of humanity. Hillel spoke of his daughter, of the boy in bed 47 in a Greek camp with untreated leukemia, of the asylum requests buried for years in bureaucratic limbo. His voice carried the weight of men who had waited too long for compassion. Sarah scribbled notes furiously, translating in her head, passing brief explanations to Hoffman, who relayed them to the command center. She could feel the room shifting. Officers realizing this wasn't the script they'd prepared for. But the backlash came quickly. This is manipulation, Dr. Werner snapped. Classic tactic: distract with personal stories, lower defenses. No, Sarah said, turning to face him for the first time since she began. Her eyes burned with conviction. It's desperation. They're not asking for money. They're not demanding political power. They're begging for their children's lives. That changes everything. Hartman folded his arms, skepticism written across his face. And what happens when they realize we can't deliver on your emotional promises? They'll start killing hostages. You'll have given them false hope and destroyed our leverage. She wanted to shout back, to shake him, to make him see. But instead, she turned back to the microphone, because only one voice mattered now, Howell. She said, You care for the children with you, don't you? Yes, he replied quickly, almost defensively. They are innocent. We give them water, food. We make sure they are not afraid. You take care of them, Sarah said softly. Just as you want someone to take care of Amamira. That matters. There was a pause. Then Hale's voice broke. Do you understand, Dr. Chun? We did not want this. We wanted medicine. We wanted papers. No one listened. We are fathers, not monsters. Her eyes stung. I believe you, Hillel. And if you trust me, maybe we can find a way to help both sets of children, yours and theirs. Behind her, Werner scoffed. You're validating them. Dangerous, irresponsible. But then it happened. A message from inside the school. A figure approaching the main entrance. Movement. Commander Brennan's voice crackled over the radio from the perimeter. Subject exiting with a white flag. Could be a distraction. Units on standby. Sarah's pulse raced. She knew what it meant. Halil was keeping his word. Hold your positions. She shouted, grabbing the headset. Do not advance. This is a gesture of good faith. Through the van window, she saw the man middle-aged, hands empty, walking slowly. He stopped. 50 meters from the line, set down a small bundle, then stepped back with hands raised. What is it? Brennan demanded. Officer Hoffman scanned signals. Then her eyes widened. Transmission incoming. From inside, Sarah snatched the receiver. Hello? Yes. His voice was clearer now, urgent. The bundle has medical records. Legal. Papers, proof of our children's needs. We want you to see we are telling truth. And, as a sign of good faith, we release the youngest. 10 children, under 8. They will come out with teachers. Do not harm them. For a moment, no one breathed. Then, one by one, the children emerged, small hands clutching teachers, eyes wide. But calm, they walked toward the perimeter, toward freedom, toward their parents waiting beyond barricades. The command center fell silent. The impossible had just happened. Dr. Werner's face tightened, fury warring with disbelief. How did you? I listened. Sarah said simply. She removed the headset for a moment, rubbing her temples. The weight of 100 lives still pressed on her shoulders, but for the first time, she felt a shift, trust. A fragile bridge had been built, and if she could hold it, maybe, just maybe, every hostage would walk free. But she knew something else too. Her colleagues weren't convinced. Not yet. Every step she took defied protocol, defied hierarchy, defied everything they trusted. And if she failed, if she stumbled even once, they would not just blame her. They would bury her. The sound of children crying with relief outside was both salvation and warning. She had won the first battle, but the war for 100 lives was only beginning. Why were the alarms sounding now, just as everything was starting to work? Sarah's pulse leapt as red lights flashed across the command center. Radios exploded with overlapping voices. Tactical teams shouting updates. Hoffman spun from her. Console, face pale, movement on the perimeter. Commander Brennan barked into her headset. A figure at the entrance. Possible breach. Sarah's chest tightened. Not again. Not now. She pushed to the glass, eyes locking on the grainy camera feed. A man, middle-aged, hands visible, walking slowly, deliberately. A strip of white cloth tied to a stick raised above him. A flag, she whispered. Could be a ruse. Dr. Werner snapped. Diversion to test our reaction. Standard playbook. No. Sarah shook her head. This is Halil keeping his word. He told me he wanted to prove good faith. But Brennan was already issuing orders. Units advance. Secure perimeter. Prepare to intercept. Stop. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. It was louder than she expected. Stronger. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. If you send men forward, she said, you'll shatter the trust we've built. This isn't an attack. It's communication. Stand down. For a heartbeat. Silence. Then Weber's voice low, commanding. Hold positions. Do not advance. Reluctantly, the tactical units froze. Weapons raised but unmoving. Outside, the man approached until he was 50 meters from the barricade. Carefully, he lowered the bundle in his arms. Backed away with slow steps, hands still. Raised. What is it? Brennan demanded. Hoffman was already scanning signals. Headphones pressed tight. Her eyes widened. Transmission coming through. Sarah grabbed the receiver. Breath caught in her throat. Halil? His voice, strained but steady. Dr. Chun, the bundle contains medical records. Asylum documents. Proof of our children's sickness. Proof of who we are. We want you to verify that we are not criminals. We are fathers, parents. That is all." Sarah's hand trembled. She forced it still. "And the children?" A pause then. "As a gesture of good faith, we release 10. The youngest. They will walk out now." Every head in the command room jerked toward the monitors, and then they appeared. 10 small figures, clutching teachers' hands, walking timidly into the daylight. The silence that followed was deafening. No one spoke as the children crossed the open ground. Step by step, until they reached the police line, parents broke through barricades, sobbing, clutching their sons and daughters. Cameras captured every embrace, broadcasting across the world, and in that silence, Werner finally broke. "Chun, what have you promised them?" Sarah turned slowly, headset still warm against her ear. Her voice was calm, but her chest ached with the weight of truth. "I promised them medicine. I promised asylum reviews. I promised someone would care enough to listen." The room erupted. "You had no authority," Werner shouted, face red. "You created expectations we cannot meet. You endangered all of us." Brennan added, "If they think we're lying hostages, die." Sarah's hands curled into fists. For a moment, she wanted to shout back. But instead, she let their voices wash over her like she wasn't even there. She turned back to the window, to the sight of children disappearing into their parents' arms. That was the answer. Not their outrage, not protocol. The answer was life. Her headset crackled again. "Dr. Chun." Her heart lurched. She pressed the receiver close. "Hello?" "Yes, you see now we told the truth." His tone had changed less guarded, almost hopeful. "We gave you proof. We gave you children. Now, can you keep your word?" Her lips parted. She felt every gaze in the command center burning into her. Her superiors wanted silence. They wanted her to stall, to deflect, to buy time until Berlin arrived with their protocols and polished experience. But she couldn't. She pictured Almamira again, 8 years old, lying in a cot, fighting for breath while her father risked everything. "Hello," she said softly. "Yes, I will keep my word. Tell me exactly what your children need." Behind her, Werner slammed a hand against the table. "Enough. Terminate her contact, now." Weber's voice cut across the room. "Stand down." The words froze everyone. Sarah turned slightly, caught his eyes. For the first time since this began, she saw not skepticism but something else in his gaze. A test, a gamble, perhaps even faith. She breathed in slow, out slower, then leaned into the microphone. "We'll find a way," she told Allah. "But you must help me. If we do this together, if you keep showing trust, every hostage will walk out alive, including you." The silence that followed stretched so long she thought maybe she had lost him then. "Dr. Chun, if you can help our children without more suffering, then yes, we will find a way." Sarah's throat tightened, a hot sting behind her eyes. She turned away slightly so the others couldn't see. This was it. A path had opened. Fragile, narrow, dangerous but real, as the hostages' cries of reunion echoed faintly from beyond the barricades. Sarah realized something with chilling clarity. She had crossed a line. She had promised more than she had power to give, if governments failed to deliver, if bureaucracy buried her words. Then the trust she had built would collapse, and people would die. But in that moment, she also knew something else. Sometimes you couldn't wait for permission. Sometimes dignity didn't speak. It acted, and tonight, her actions would decide whether 100 souls lived to see the morning. Why were the alarms sounding now, just as everything was starting to work? Sarah's pulse leapt as red lights flashed across the command center. Radios exploded with overlapping voices. Tactical teams shouting updates. Hoffman spun from her. Console, face pale, movement on the perimeter. Commander Brennan barked into her headset. A figure at the entrance. Possible breach. Sarah's chest tightened. Not again. Not now. She pushed to the glass, eyes locking on the grainy Camera feed. A man middle-aged, hands visible, walking slowly, deliberately. A strip of white cloth tied to a stick raised above him. A flag, she whispered. Could be a ruse, Dr. Werner snapped. Diversion to test our reaction. Standard playbook. No. Sarah shook her head. This is Halil keeping his word. He told me he wanted to prove good faith, but Brennan was already issuing orders. Units advance. Secure perimeter. Prepare to intercept. Stop. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. It was louder than she expected, stronger. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. If you send men forward, she said, you'll shatter the trust we've built. This isn't an attack. It's communication. Stand down. For a heartbeat. Silence. Then Weber's voice low, commanding. Hold positions. Do not advance. Reluctantly, the tactical units froze. Weapons raised but unmoving, outside. The man approached until he was 50 meters from the barricade. Carefully, he lowered the bundle in his arms. Backed away with slow steps, hands still. Raised. What is it? Brennan demanded. Hoffman was already scanning signals. Headphones pressed tight, her eyes widened. Transmission coming through. Sarah grabbed the receiver. Breath caught in her throat. Halil? His voice, strained but steady. Dr. Chun, the bundle contains medical records, asylum documents, proof of our children's sickness, proof of who we are. We want you to verify that we are not criminals. We are fathers, parents, that is all. Sarah's hand trembled. She forced it still. And the children? A pause then, as a gesture of good faith. We released 10. The youngest, they will walk out now. Every head in the command room jerked toward the monitors. And then they appeared. 10 small figures, clutching teachers' hands, walking timidly into the daylight. The silence that followed was deafening. No one spoke as the children crossed the open ground. Step by step, until they reached the police line, parents broke through barricades, sobbing, clutching their sons and daughters. Cameras captured every embrace, broadcasting across the world, and in that silence, Werner finally broke. Chun, what have you promised them? Sarah turned slowly, headset still warm against her ear. Her voice was calm, but her chest ached with the weight of truth. I promised them medicine. I promised asylum reviews. I promised someone would care enough to listen. The room erupted. You had no authority. Werner shouted, face red. You created expectations we cannot meet. You endangered all of us. Brennan added, if they think we're lying, hostages die. Sarah's hands curled into fists. For a moment, she wanted to shout back. But instead, she let their voices wash over her like she wasn't even there. She turned back to the window, to the sight of children disappearing into their parents' arms. That was the answer. Not their outrage, not protocol. The answer was life. Her headset crackled again. Dr. Chun, her heart lurched. She pressed the receiver close. Hello? Yes. You see now, we told the truth. His tone had changed less. Guarded, almost hopeful. We gave you proof. We gave you children. Now, can you keep your word? Her lips parted. She felt every gaze in the command center burning into her. Her superiors wanted silence. They wanted her to stall, to deflect, to buy time until Berlin arrived with their protocols and polished experience. But she couldn't. She pictured Amamira again, 8 years old, lying in a cot, fighting for breath while her father risked everything. Halil, she said softly. Yes, I will keep my word. Tell me exactly what your children need. Behind her. Werner slammed a hand against the table. Enough. Terminate her contact. Now. Weber's voice cut across the room. Stand down. The words froze everyone. Sarah turned slightly, caught his eyes. For the first time since this began, she saw not skepticism but something else in his gaze. Test. A gamble. Perhaps even faith. She breathed in slow, out slower, then leaned into the microphone. We'll find a way. She told hello. But you must help me. If we do this together, if you keep showing trust, every hostage will walk out alive, including you." The silence that followed stretched so long she thought maybe she had lost him then. "Dr. Chun, if you can help our children without more suffering, then yes, we will find a way." Sarah's throat tightened, a hot sting behind her eyes. She turned away slightly so the others couldn't see. This was it. A path had opened. Fragile, narrow, dangerous, but real. As the hostages' cries of reunion echoed faintly from beyond the barricades, Sarah realized something with chilling clarity. She had crossed a line. She had promised more than she had power to give. If governments failed to deliver, if bureaucracy buried her words, then the trust she had built would collapse and people would die. But in that moment, she also knew something else. Sometimes you couldn't wait for permission. Sometimes dignity didn't speak. It acted. And tonight, her actions would decide whether 100 souls lived to see the morning. What happens when trust runs out before time does? The clock on the wall read 10:47 a.m. Every red digit was a drumbeat toward noon. Toward death. Sarah felt each tick like a hammer against her ribs. The room buzzed with frantic energy analysts shuffling through files. Tactical teams whispering into radios. Diplomats hammering phones with foreign ministries. Every voice was urgent, but none were steady. None except hers. Her headset was warm against her ears, the wire tugging like a lifeline on the other end. Hale's voice strained, restless. "You promised," he said. "You told me our children would be seen, that we would not be lied to again. Where is the proof?" Sarah closed her eyes briefly, her mind racing. She had pushed the governments. She had begged Weber to escalate the asylum requests, the medical approvals, the paperwork that had trapped these families for years. Progress was moving, but progress was never fast enough. "Hello," she said softly. "Officials are reviewing the documents you gave us. They're verifying every medical report, every asylum file. They see your truth now, but I need time. Just a little more time." "Time?" His voice broke into a sharp laugh, hollow and exhausted. "My daughter does not have time. The boy with cancer does not have time. Every hour they weaken while your people shuffle papers." Sarah's hand tightened on the microphone. She glanced sideways. Hartman stood with arms folded, his stare like a blade. Werner scribbled furious notes, shaking his head as if to dismiss everything she said. Brennan tapped her watch, mouthing, "This ends badly." They didn't believe in her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She turned back to the headset. "Hillel, listen to me. You've already shown the world your truth. The cameras captured your proof. People are watching. Governments are moving. If you hold on just a little longer, we can bring your children to safety." A silence, then a ragged sigh. "Words, Dr. Chun. Always words." Her stomach clenched. For a moment, she thought she had lost him. Then another voice broke through faintly in the background, younger, trembling. "Hillel, please." A second man, another father. The desperation in his tone was unmistakable. Sarah leaned in. "Who is that?" Hillel hesitated then. "Kareem. His son is the one with leukemia. He has been waiting 8 months for treatment." Sarah swallowed. "Put him on." There was shuffling, a breath, then a voice, raw and low. "Dr. Chun, if you lie, you will kill my son twice, once with your false hope, once with my hands when I do what must be done." The words sliced through her. She steadied her voice. "Kareem, I'm not lying. I'm fighting for your son right now. I will not abandon him. I will not abandon you." The silence stretched. Then the line clicked, the men muttering in Arabic, voices heated, uncertain. She caught fragments. Trust. Risk. Lies. Hope. Behind her, Werner's voice dripped contempt. "They're fracturing. This is the moment to press. Threaten force. Push them to surrender before they regroup." "No," Sarah said firmly. pulling off her headset just long enough to face him. If we push, we lose. They don't need threats. They're already drowning. They need a hand to hold, Werner sneered. They need reality. You're feeding fantasy, and when it collapses, blood is on your hands. Her chest burned, anger rising. But before she could respond, Hoffman gasped. Incoming transmission new terms. Sarah yanked the headset back on. Hello? His voice returned, sharper now. Dr. Chun, if you are true, prove it. Show us you have the power you claim. Bring evidence that our children will be helped. Without it, the deadline stands. Her heart sank. Evidence, not promises, not words. Evidence she didn't have. Not yet. She looked at Weber, her silent plea clear. He was on the phone with Brussels, voice clipped, urgent. Negotiating not with hostages, but with politicians. She turned back to the microphone. Hello, listen. The documents you gave us, they are already moving through officials. Emergency medical authorizations can be issued within 24 hours. Your children can be treated. Can? His voice was sharp, almost accusatory. Or will? Her throat tightened. Around her, the room waited. She could hear her colleagues thinking, don't do it. Don't cross the line. Don't promise what you can't deliver. But in her mind, she saw faces, children she had never met but had studied for years through case files and photographs. Children who had been statistics until now. Well, she said finally, her voice did not waver. Your children will receive treatment. I give you my word. The command room erupted. Werner slammed his notebook shut. You've doomed us all. When those promises collapse, we'll have dead children on both sides of that wall. Chun. Hartman snapped. You just gave away leverage we'll never get back. Sarah ignored them. Her focus was the fragile voice in her ear. Halil was quiet. Then he said something she hadn't expected. Something that made her knees almost buckle. Then, Dr. Chun, maybe we can end this. Her breath caught. What do you mean? There was murmuring again. Urgent, heated. Then Hal's voice, steady now. If we believe you, if our children are safe, then we do not need hostages. We need help. Show us your word is real, and we will release them, all of them. The room froze. For a moment, even the buzz of equipment seemed to fade. Hello, Sarah said carefully. I will make sure of it, but you must continue to show good faith. More releases, step by step. Build proof for the world. Yes, Halil said slowly. Step by step. But if you betray us, remember, we are still inside, with them. The line clicked off. Sarah removed the headset. Her hands trembling. For the first time since the crisis began, hope flickered like a fragile flame. But the backlash came instantly. Werner's voice thundered across the room. You have made commitments no one authorized. You have traded state sovereignty for fantasy. Do you even understand what you've done? Sarah met his glare, her voice low but firm. I saved 10 children. I bought trust, and I just opened the door to saving 90 more. Werner leaned forward, fury etched into every line of his face. Or you lit a fuse you cannot put out. Sarah turned back toward the monitors, toward the image of that school surrounded by floodlights and guns, toward the thought of terrified children clutching one another inside. Her pulse was steady now, her decision made. She had crossed the point of no return. The promises she gave might destroy her career. They might ruin her name. They might even brand her as reckless, insubordinate, dangerous. But if they saved 100 lives, it was a price she was willing to pay. The clock ticked closer to noon, and Sarah Chun knew. She had less than 90 minutes to turn fragile words into undeniable truth, or watch the world collapse on her shoulders. What does the last 90 minutes feel like when 100 lives depend on them? For Sarah, it felt like drowning in silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the suffocating quiet that followed shouting. The kind that pressed against your ribs until you thought you might break. The clock read 10:58. Every tick closer to noon was a nail driven into her chest, across the command center. Werner paced like a predator in a cage, muttering about procedure, liability, diplomacy. Brennan leaned over. Maps, whispering to tactical officers, already preparing contingencies for an armed breach. Hartman scowled at her headset as though it were poison, and Weber just watched her. Silent, inscrutable, as if weighing the weight of her soul against the weight of 100 others. Her earpiece crackled. Hilal's voice, low and heavy. Dr. Chun? The men are growing restless. They say we cannot trust governments. They say only blood will make them listen. I try to calm them. But, his breath caught. I cannot hold them much longer. Sarah's grip on the microphone tightened. Hello. You've already shown the world who you are. Fathers, protectors. You released children when you didn't have to. That proves your strength, not violence. They don't see it that way. He said bitterly. They see weakness. They say the world is laughing at us. Her heart pounded. She could almost hear the other men's voices in the background. Sharp, angry, circling like wolves if Halil lost control, the fragile bridge they had built would collapse in an instant. And let me give you something, Sarah said quickly. Something that proves the world is listening, not laughing, waiting, ready to act. Behind her, Werner snapped. What are you offering? You can't deliver anything tangible in time. Sarah ignored him. She leaned into the microphone, her voice calm but urgent. Halil. Within the hour, international observers will arrive. Doctors, Red Cross. They will review your documents and confirm your children's needs. That's already in motion. I just need you to hold on. The silence that followed stretched thin as glass. Then Halil whispered, almost broken. Do you swear? Sarah swallowed hard. Yes, I swear, Werner exploded. Enough. She's fabricating authority she doesn't have. This isn't negotiation. It's fantasy. End this charade before lives are lost. But Weber's voice cut across his. Let her continue. The room froze. Sarah met his eyes, and for the first time, she saw it clearly. He wasn't shielding her out of indulgence. He believed her, not fully, not blindly, but enough to risk the world's judgment. Her headset crackled. Again, Hilal's voice was back, steadier. Dr. Chun. If your word is true, then perhaps we can end this without more blood. But the others demand proof before noon. Something undeniable. If we do not show them, they will kill a hostage, and I will not be able to stop it. Sarah's throat went dry. What proof? A pause, then. They want to hear it, not from you, from them. From the governments, a voice of power, promising our children will be treated. Her stomach dropped. She turned, eyes darting to Weber. We need a minister, a senior official. Someone with authority. They need to hear it. Werner laughed, harsh and bitter. You expect the Austrian government to worse. The EU to address armed hostage-takers live. Impossible. Politically suicidal. They don't need a speech. Sarah shot back. They need a voice, a human being speaking directly, promising their children won't be abandoned. That's it. Hartman shook his head. Unthinkable. We cannot negotiate with criminals at the level of ministers. It sets precedent. Precedent? Sarah's voice rose, sharp with fury. There are 100 children inside that school. Do you want the precedent of letting them die because you are too proud to pick up a phone? The room fell silent. Her words hung heavy, undeniable. Weber exhaled slowly. I'll call the foreign ministry. Minutes dragged like hours. Sarah stayed on the line with Halil, stalling, soothing, promising every breath she could without letting her voice crack. She told him stories of resilience families reunited, children saved from impossible odds. She fed him hope like oxygen, keeping him alive with words. At 11:37, Weber pressed a button, patching the line through a secure channel. A new voice entered. The airwaves measured, accented, diplomatic. This is Minister Albrecht of the Austrian Foreign Service. To the men inside, your children's medical cases will be reviewed immediately by international observers. Humanitarian assistance will be provided. That is our commitment." The line went silent. Then Sarah heard it Halal's ragged breath, breaking into a sob he tried to smother. "For 3 years. We begged for this. 3 years." Another voice in the background shouted, furious, "Lies! Always lies!" Chaos erupted on the linemen shouting, Halal shouting back, the sound of something crashing. Sarah's heart stopped. "Halal!" She cried, "Stay with me. Listen to my voice. This is real. This is happening. Don't let them drown you in despair." For agonizing seconds, only static. Then Halal's voice, hoarse, shaking. "Dr. Chun, I believe you, but they demand more. They say one gesture is not enough. They say, if this is real, then we must release another group." Sarah's breath caught. "Another group, a chance." "Yes," she whispered fiercely. "Yes, Halal, do it. Show them strength. Show them mercy." Her colleagues leaned forward, every eye locked on her. The line crackled again. "Very well, 20 more. Women, teachers, they will walk out now." The room erupted, not with outrage this time, but with stunned disbelief. On the monitors, the school doors opened. Figures emerged slowly, hands raised. Women clutching children, teachers guiding them across the yard. 20 more lives saved. Sarah sagged against the console, relief flooding her veins, but the clock still ticked, still marched, still carried them closer to noon. As the last of the teachers crossed into safety, Halal's voice returned, low and weary. "Dr. Chun, we have given much, more than we thought possible. But the deadline stands. If your proof does not reach us before noon, I cannot hold the others back, not even for you." The line went dead. Sarah pulled the headset off slowly, her hands trembling. 90 lives still hung in the balance. Less than 20 minutes left. The room swirled around her, Werner muttering about impossible demands, Brennan barking into her radio, Hartman insisting on breaching plans. But Sarah heard none of it. She stared at the ticking clock, her reflection faint in the glass. She had done everything, built trust, won gestures of faith, brought governments to the table. But now the final test loomed, and she wasn't sure if even she could pass it. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of her soul. "Please, God, just a little more time." What do the last 15 minutes feel like when the fate of 100 souls hangs on your voice? For Sarah, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, with the storm pulling at her every breath. The clock read 11:45, 15 minutes to noon. 15 minutes until Halal's men began the countdown to killing. The room was fracturing. Werner pressed a phone to his ear, barking to ministers about liability. Brennan was already prepping tactical entry, whispering coordinates to teams. Hidden in the shadows, Hartman argued with anyone who would listen, insisting Sarah be removed from the line before she destroyed them all. But Sarah heard none of it. She sat at the console, headset pressed tight, waiting for Halal's voice. It came at 11:48. Rough, heavy, near breaking. "Dr. Chun?" The men grow louder. They say we've been fooled again. They say the world only pretends to care. Sarah leaned forward, her voice low, steady. "Halal, look at what you've already done. 30 freed, 30 alive. That is not weakness. That is strength no one can erase." His voice wavered. "But they want proof more than words, something undeniable. What do they want?" She asked, though she feared the answer. Silence. Then, softly, "They want to see our children, to see Amira, to see she is safe." Sarah's chest tightened. It was impossible. The girl was hundreds of kilometers away. Medical teams were moving, but not fast enough. There was no way to bring her to the line in time. Her colleagues seized on the silence. Werner shook his head, lips thin with triumph. It's over. She can't deliver. We breach. No, Sarah said sharply. Her voice was louder than she intended. Fierce enough that even Brennan paused. No one moves. No one fires. Not while I still have his voice. She turned back, forcing calm into her tone. Halila, I can't bring your daughter to you right now, but I can bring her story. I can. Bring her voice. Will that be enough? Another silence, then a hoarse whisper. Her voice? Sarah's eyes darted to Hoffman. Find her. Now. Patch her through. The room erupted. Are you mad? Werner hissed. Exposing a child to hostage-takers' demands? Unthinkable. Unthinkable. Sarah shot back. Is letting her father believe she's already dead. Hoffman's fingers flew over the keyboard, patching channels, searching through embassy lines. Every second was a heartbeat lost. 11:52. The clock bled seconds like water. Then a new voice crackled onto the line. Small, fragile, trembling. Baba? The room froze. Even Werner's mouth fell silent. Halil made a sound between a sob and a prayer. Amamira? It's me, the girl whispered, her accent soft, halting. The doctors. They are helping. I am okay. I miss you. For a moment. The line was nothing but breath. Then Halil's voice broke, raw and unguarded. Yala! My daughter, my little one, you live. Men shouted in the background, angry, disbelieving. But Amamira spoke again, stronger this time. They are helping me, Baba. The lady doctor promised. She's telling the truth. Don't be afraid. Sarah's hand pressed against her chest, holding back the tears that threatened to spill. Halil's voice steadied. Do you hear this? He shouted to the others. She lives. She is safe. They keep their word. The room filled with chaos, men yelling, arguments clashing in Arabic, some voices furious, others breaking, a fracture deep within the group. At 11:56, Halil's voice returned, exhausted but resolute. Dr. Chun, I have convinced them. They will not harm the hostages. We will release them, all of them, but promise me one more thing. Sarah's breath caught. Anything. Do not let the world forget us. When this ends, they will call us terrorists, monsters. Promise me you will not let them erase why we did this. Her voice cracked, but she didn't hide it. Halal. I promise. Your daughter will know you fought for her life. Not as a monster, as a father. At 11:58, the school doors opened. The first figures emerged slowly, uncertain. Then a wave, men, women, children, teachers, dozens pouring out. There. Steps hurried, desperate, but alive. The cameras caught everything. The world watched as one by one, 100 hostages crossed into the arms of safety. Tears, cries, embraces, parents collapsing to their knees, clutching their children like they would never let go again. Sarah removed her headset slowly. Her hands trembled so badly she had to press them against her knees. She didn't look at the others. Didn't need to. The proof was outside, walking. Free. Weber approached quietly. His voice was softer than she had ever heard. You did it! She shook her head, her throat too tight for words. She hadn't done it alone. Halil had, Amamira had, the fragile, impossible thread of trust had. But Werner stepped forward, fury still sharp in his voice. She broke every rule. She gave unauthorized promises. She set a precedent that will haunt us for years. Sarah finally turned. Her eyes burned, but her voice was calm. And yet, 100 are alive. Which precedent would you prefer? Werner had no answer. He turned away, lips pressed thin. His silence an admission he would never make aloud. Outside, the last of the hostages were carried to safety. The school stood empty. The standoff was over. At 12:01, the clock stopped mattering. Sarah removed her earpiece, setting it gently on the console. Around her, chaos still swirled, officers shouting, diplomats scrambling, reporters flooding the airwaves. But she sat in stillness, her chest finally able to draw a full breath. For the first time since dawn, the world was quiet. She stood, her legs unsteady, and walked past her colleagues. Past their stares of disbelief, admiration, resentment. She didn't meet their eyes. She didn't need to. Outside, the air was cold against her face, the sky pale with morning light. Sirens wailed in the distance. But here, at the barricades, she saw only the reunions. Children clinging to parents, teachers sobbing into the arms of friends, life flooding back into those who had nearly lost it. She watched silently, unseen, as if she were just another shadow at the edge of history, because she knew this truth. It was never about her. It was about them, the ones who lived, the ones who had been given back a chance at tomorrow. And as she turned away, a final thought rose in her chest. Not bitter, not triumphant, but steady. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.